So thanks again, Senator Lee and Senator Booker, for joining us today, and thank you guys for coming out here. Before we get too in the weeds of criminal justice reform, which is what we're talking about today, as Ben mentioned, I wanted to talk about something a bit more personal. Do either of you know anyone who, it can be a family member or close friend who has been arrested or spent any time in prison?
I'd love to take this opportunity to tell a story about a young man named Weldon Angelos, who I've gotten to know in connection with my efforts on this process. Weldon Angelos was arrested back in 2004 for distributing marijuana, really small quantities, 3 dime bag quantities over a 72-hour period. And he ended up being prosecuted for that. While he was selling these very small quantities of marijuana, 3 times over a 72-hour period, he had a gun on his person at the time. The gun was not discharged during the offense. The gun wasn't even brandished during the offense. But he had it on his person because of the way he was charged and because of the way Section 924C has been interpreted by the courts. He was charged with a minimum mandatory sentence of 55 years. 55 years. So this is a young man who was the father of 2 young children at the time. And when he gets this sentence, if he serves it all out, he'll be 80 by the time he's out. At the time his sentence was issued, the federal judge who was imposing the sentence, who was himself a former federal prosecutor, and I was a federal prosecutor in the office who was prosecuting him at the time, this federal judge, Paul Cassell, issued an opinion disagreeing with the sentence the judge was about to impose. And in that opinion, he said a number of things. He said, this is an unconscionable sentence. There is no question about it. This guy's getting more time than someone would get if they had committed rape in most jurisdictions, or if he had committed certain acts of terrorism or kidnapping, carjacking, airplane hijacking. And yet this federal judge, have no discretion in this. And then he said something that stuck with me. He said, only Congress can fix this problem. Those words have been echoing around in my head ever since then, and they have tormented me. Now, Weldon Angelos was released through a miraculous series of events that resulted in the prosecutors going to court and requesting a special release, very unusual procedure, but this underlying problem remains. In the meantime, I've gotten to know Weldon's family. I've met Weldon's sister and met Weldon's sons, and finally have gotten to know Weldon in person rather than just from a distance. He and I now communicate regularly through social media, and we've had some great visits since he's been back. His story is an inspiring one, and he's going around the country telling his story. And I've enjoyed getting to know him and his family, because it reminds me of the fact that these are far more than just numbers that we're looking at. These are real people. And the costs we're looking at are not just economic in nature, they are human costs. People's brothers and fathers and sons and uncles and nephews are being locked up for years at a time, sometimes for decades at a time. And that imposes a tremendous human cost that we need to take into account when we review our federal system.
Senator